Hi everybody. In one of my other videos I talked about the 4 tones in Mandarin Chinese and we practiced pronouncing them with single syllables. A lot of people find the tones very difficult to remember and to pronounce at the beginning, and you start to wonder how important they really are and whether people can actually understand if you pronounce a word in the wrong tones. All the dialects of Chinese, including Mandarin and Cantonese, have tones. They're what is known as tonal languages, just like Thai and Vietnamese and other languages, which means that the tones are a critical part of the language. If you're not using them at all, or if you're using them wrongly, then you're going to be speaking not very accurate Chinese. So in this sense, they're pretty important. Having said that, though, I've heard learners speaking Chinese with absolutely no tones at all, and people could understand what they were saying mostly due to context. So, just to give you an example, tang means soup, tang means sugar, tang means to lie down, and tang means scalding hot. But if you just ordered a coffee and you just asked for one of these, then it would be pretty clear that you were actually asking for sugar. So that's just an example of a particular context. The other reason is because that words in Chinese are generally 2 to 3 syllables. I mentioned that each syllable is one Chinese character, and when you put them together in combinations, it leaves much less room for misunderstanding, even if you got the tones wrong, and the other person would probably understand what you were trying to say. However, you can cause misunderstanding by using the wrong tones. For example, I once met a guy who was at a restaurant and he was asking for ice cubes, and the most correct way to do this would be to ask for 冰块 or 冰块, but he was just saying the first syllable, and he was saying what should have been 冰, but in the first tone, but he was pronouncing it in the fourth tone, 病. So what he actually said was 你有病吗? Which means, do you have a disease, or is there something really wrong with you? Whereas he should have said 你有冰块吗? So obviously that's quite an embarrassing mistake, but this kind of thing doesn't happen that much. But even so, it's much better to try to avoid this by speaking in the correct tones. That way you'll avoid any kind of misinterpretation. So let's compare what Mandarin sounds like with the tones and without any tones. So for example, the capital of China, Beijing, in English would just be pronounced in a flat tone, but in Mandarin it should be a third tone plus a first tone, 北京. So for example, Nanjing should be 南京, second tone, first tone. Shanghai would be 上海, Shanghai, fourth tone and third tone. And just give you a couple more examples. Guangzhou would be 广州, a third tone, then a first tone. And Shenzhen would be 深圳, first tone and then a fourth tone. And it's the same with names as well. For example, Chairman Mao's full name, if you said it in English, you might say Mao Zedong or Mao Zedong. But in Mandarin, you have to pay attention to the tones in the name as well, obviously. So it should be pronounced with a second tone, then a second tone, then a first tone. Mao Zedong, Mao Zedong. And the first syllable is the surname, because the surname comes first in Chinese. And that's how you pronounce it correctly. Another example would be the tennis player Li Na. So in Chinese, this is pronounced with a third tone, then a fourth tone, Li Na. So this would be the correct way to say it. And you've got to pay attention to this whenever you're speaking Chinese, whether it's a name or a normal word or any time when you're just saying normal things in Chinese. And if you say somebody's name in the wrong tones and you're not a native Chinese speaker, then they'll probably forgive you, but you could be saying something that means something completely different, or it could even be something rude. So you see that the correct pronunciation and the tones is actually what makes the difference between saying the words in an English accent and speaking Chinese. It's part of what makes Chinese Chinese. Okay, so I hope this video has helped you to understand why the tones are important in Chinese, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.